Resident Evil 4 is one of the most highly regarded games of all time. The tactical combat mixed with the horror tones of the game create some of the most iconic moments in the franchise, all while staying tongue-in-cheek.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
But the memory of RE4 is not only influenced by the game's cheeky tone or its awesome gameplay, but in the way that it feels like a video game. It's a video gamey-ass video game, as the gaming Brit would say. This is my favorite aspect of RE4, and there is no room in the game that exemplifies this more than the infamous waterhall. Waterhall is the third crescendo of the game. It builds up suspense and challenge that would ultimately culminate in the peaks in gameplay and tension that we see in events like Village and Magikarp. For many, this is regarded as the hardest room in the game, but it's not often met with malice. It's one of those amazing open-ended situations that games like RE4 put you in. The beauty in a room like Waterhall is that anyone and everyone will approach it differently. But how do speedrunners approach this room? As open-ended as it may be, at the end of the day, there must be a most optimal path. What is this path, and how has it changed over time? I'm going to take you on a trip down memory lane and explain the evolution of how speedrunners take on Waterhall, from New Game Plus to New Game Professional. The routing and decision making displayed in this room has changed a lot since 2005, and for good reason. Firstly, what makes Waterhall so difficult? Well, including the room prior, there is a mini-boss, the Gyarados, who is a Wolverine-looking motherfucker with no eyes, a room full of archers and guys with dynamite, and a guy who is always going to have an insta-kill Plaga. The room itself presents 2 archers that overlook the room, a red zealot, 4 shield guys, and 11 robed individuals with an assortment of tools. Going downstairs, Leon and Ashley need to split up and activate the crank, which they can use to lower the stairs. Once the bridge is dropped, 5 scythe dudes appear, and one of them is a red zealot. After going upstairs, Ashley has to crank 2 more cranks while Leon protects her from waves of bad guys, while even more enemies surround him. It's easy to see why this room can be a nightmare to make fast. Back in 2005, when the game was released, there was an immediate emergence of 2 categories. For those who know categories, they are a basic rule set to be followed during a speedrun. The main 2 were New Game Plus and New Game. New Game Plus allows for the use of any items carried over from previous playthroughs. Infinite rocket launchers and the Chicago typewriter were common. Whereas in New Game, you're only permitted to use items gained on the current playthrough. For a game so new, the obvious choice for many was New Game Plus, as it's easier to get into and often was done just for fun even before speedrunning was considered a thing. Back when there was only the GameCube version, there was no Special 2 costume, so Ashley was vulnerable, as well as there was no PRL. American versions of the game did not have the easy difficulty, and most New Game Plus speedrunners started their save files on normal with their casual playthroughs. This led to New Game Plus normal being the meta, even though New Game Plus easy would technically be faster. Runners had not discovered any glitches yet, and most runs were basically casual playthroughs of the game using the Chicago typewriter to mow their way through. The first run on record is a 3-hour, 45 minutes, and 33-second time by a player known as 666. While no footage is remaining, it's estimated that they used the Chicago typewriter to mow their way through various rooms and run to the end. Later that same month, the first run to have video footage was done. Kip achieved a 1 hour and 58 minute time and 53 seconds. The first ever sub 2 hour. It's important to note that back in the day, it was more popular to do what is known as a segmented speedrun. Segmented runs are basically speedruns where you do each part in individual segments. This could be each room at a time or each chapter. You can try each segment as many times as you would like and try to get it as good as you possibly can. Then, you take all of the recordings and cut them together to make it appear as one full run. This is generally against the rules nowadays, but segmented runs were how people started. And especially back in the day, there was nowhere that you could upload 2 hours of straight footage. And most people couldn't even record that. Kip's Waterhall was basically a Chicago run, using the stylish weapon of mass destruction to kill everything in his sight and defend Ashley. In October of the same year, Capcom released a PlayStation 2 port of the GameCube exclusive. The PS2 version would add more content, most notably the PRL, a laser gun that could kill entire rooms at once, which would be useful in New Game Plus speedruns, except for the fact that loading screens on the PS2 were so long that almost no one wanted to run it. So this is how most runs would continue to be until in early 2007, a huge breakthrough was found in the Resident Evil 4 speedrunning community. The Ditman glitch. Basically, the Ditman glitch allows you to increase your animation speeds by aiming with the striker shotgun. And because in New Game Plus, you can start with whatever you desire, this was huge. Inventories were entirely rearranged as the striker was added into the New Game Plus category. There was one problem, however. Since to use the Ditman glitch, you needed to open the inventory twice, it didn't actually save time in a lot of the places that you might think it would back on the GameCube and PS2. In fact, the loading screens for opening the inventory took so long that some people even considered the glitch useless at the time. Also in 2007, the infamous PC-07 port was thrust into this world. We don't talk about it much because we want to forget it exists, but the improved load times did make Ditman slightly more useful. Very few runs were ever done on this version, however, because it's just really bad. Later in 2007, the best version of RE4 would come out, the Wii version. With all of the added content from PS2, but way faster loading times, the Wii would be a mini revolution for RE4 speedrunning. Ditman was now way more useful. Unfortunately, it was still not worth using in waterhall, but opening the inventory in and of itself was not that slow, so use of flash grenades was a new implementation for the waterhall. Until about 2012, the strats stayed pretty much the same. Optimizations were made for other parts of the game that lowered the overall time, but waterhall stayed mostly stagnant. That is until one day when a speedrunner discovered a way to manipulate something known as difficulty adjustment. DA, as it is known, is a process the game goes through to gradually adjust the difficulty of the game depending on how well or poorly the player is performing. Things like missing shots, getting hit, and dying would make the game easier, while killing enemies makes the game harder. For a while, players had been intentionally taking a hit and missing some shots to make Del Lago easier. But it wasn't until late 2012 that they discovered that this strategy could be used to make waterhall significantly easier as well. It turns out that while on the gondola before the big cheese, you could take a lot of hits at no time loss. Since the gondola is an auto-scroller, you could just tank hits over and over while healing to drastically lower your difficulty. Basically, they trick the game into thinking that they're just really, really bad. This has implications in a few locations, but most notably it's used in waterhall. With the implementation of this, there is no longer archers or scythe guys when the bridge is finally lowered. This is a huge development in the speedrun. Removing the archers means that the room can be much more consistent and would require a lot less flash grenades. Scythe guys at the top of the stairs were also a huge inconvenience, but now they no longer exist. The second phase of waterhall could now be looked at in a new light, because it was essentially an auto-scroller, the only requirement being that you have to protect Ashley. It became the perfect section to take tons of intentional damage to lower the difficulty even more. This would have large implications in later sections of the game. This development changed how waterhall would be approached forever. The once intimidating hall of water was now made just a bit less scary. In 2014, Ditman was buffed once more with the Steam release of Resident Evil 4 on PC. This port was vastly superior to the original PC port in both controls and loading times. Once again, Ditman was more useful in more places. That, alongside the development of a load remover timer, Ditman became a strategy used in almost every room in the game, including waterhall. This is what brings us to the current meta of waterhall, placing Ashley in a position where she will get grabbed and then immediately dropped. PRL the Garrador, Ditman and stutter step to pass the enemies while making Ashley follow. Enter waterhall. Ditman to the broken butterfly, shoot the left shield guy, run to the right, shoot the broken butterfly to alert the enemies, split up with Ashley to open the crank. When the guy opens the door, flash him to keep it open, flash upstairs and use Ashley as a shield. In the second phase, shoot these guys with the striker, take intentional damage, shoot the running guy, take damage, and then leave. New Game Plus for the time being is basically solved, but New Game would be a much tougher beast to tame. With limited resources and a higher difficulty level, there would be no manipulation of the difficulty adjustment system, and runners would have to learn how to adapt on the fly. The earliest recorded run I could find was from a Japanese runner in 2008. They start off with what would become a very nice strategy to take out the Gyarados, sniping his Parasite every time his stun resets in order to stun lock him to death. Then he grabs Ashley and heads into the next room, blasting some guys with the shotgun for good measure and sneaking past the dynamite and into the waterhall. He then quickly dispatches the archers and one shield dude with the sniper, then switches to the shotgun to stun the other. He opts to run down the left side and shoot everything in his way with the shotgun. After releasing the crank, he flashes his way upstairs and then protects Ashley. As she cranks, he uses about 5 flashes total. This is about every flash that you could potentially get up to this point in the game. Once they sneak past the Red Zealot, he starts the second phase. Because there is so many enemies still alive, no enemies are going to spawn up top and try to capture Ashley. There is a limit to the amount of enemies that can appear on screen, and since they never despawn, the runner won't have to worry about protecting Ashley. Now they just wait as she cranks and try not to die. Here the runner uses a few fire grenades to stall out the enemies and kill them slowly. Eventually, because the enemy cap is no longer reached, the running guy spawns and needs to be shot so Ashley doesn't get grabbed. The runner makes sure to grab the first aid spray and heads out of the room victorious. For its time, this strategy was very impressive. Utilizing the enemy cap like this was far beyond the strats of the time, and it's actually unsure whether or not they knew exactly what they were doing. This would stand as the meta for New Game Waterhall for a few years, until some small optimizations were found around 2011. It turns out you can get an easy triple collateral on these dudes as they run back, making it for a flashy time save. The opening to the infamous Waterhall also changed for the better, opting to shoot both shield guys before going down the middle instead. The shotgun is still used to clear out the enemies, but less flash grenades are used. This time though, there was a rather big discovery implemented into the run. Once Ashley triggers the second phase of Waterhall, if you restart checkpoint, it actually despawns all of the enemies in the room, leaving you only with the boys on the top rope. These top rope boys must be stalled or disposed of in order to protect Ashley. The sniper is of great use here. There's additionally a few extra enemies that spawn, but killing them is no big deal. In the next year, a few rather large optimizations would be found. Runners stopped buying larger cases and got rid of the shotgun. This saves a lot of time having to find more treasures to sell to buy that case. Runners also started implementing rescopes or quickscoping into the Gyarados fight. Unscoping and then rescoping with the auto rifle actually resets the firing speed, allowing for faster firing. This is used to flex on the Gyarados for a much faster kill. Since there is no more shotgun, flashes and pistol are used to stun the enemies as we head through Waterhall. Much more efficient use of kicks is also used to deal with the shield bros and other nuisances. Once the second phase starts, runners now have a more optimal use of their time, going around and collecting a few things, such as this money, fire grenade, and frag grenade. For a long time, the Waterhall was a point of contention amongst runners, the dynamic nature of the room leaving some runners with different strategies for how to deal with certain events. For example, some runners would opt to use frag grenades in the basement to clear out the shield guys. However, this was eventually deemed too slow, as killing too many enemies in the first phase plays an unskippable cutscene that spawns more shield guys. In 2014, a more contemporary inventory was routed. The pistol was out. Friendship with the pistol ended. TMP is my new best friend. The TMP proved to be beyond useful in this room. Its large clip size and ease of use made it perfect for kneecapping fools and running right on by. There was still a large use of flash grenades, but now Waterhall can be much more fluid and adaptable. 30 shots in a clip is a lot more dynamic than a few flash grenades. This meta also led to another sick collateral in the second phase, cleaning up the mess around Ashley. This would evolve into what, in 2016, would be the definitive strategy for Waterhall. Quickscope montage galore. Gyarados down, snipes in the Waterhall, TMP fools, one flash for the stairs, and snipes for days on the second phase. However, this new meta evolved 2 additional strategies. If you place Ashley right here before doing Gyarados, you can then come back and tell her to follow you, allowing this to aggro the enemies and let them walk right by. Also, the use of fire grenades on the shield guy led to saving many flash grenades. These strategies remain unchanged for a long time, until what recently has been the newest development in waterhall technology. In 2019, based on strategies developed in the no merchant professional category, we started completely skipping using the sniper in the first phase of waterhall. Fire grenade waterhall, as it is now called, is accumulation of all the previous year's work in the field with new implementations of some strategies developed in no merchant. Instead of opening the fight with the snipes, we now yeet a fire grenade across the map and get almost everyone with it, and just run right past the archers hoping they don't hit us. This saves sniper ammo and is actually faster. Using the TMP to kneecap fools through the basement, when we get back to the top, we flash both the archers and start the crank. Instead of using a fire grenade, we TMP the shield guy and then kick him in the face. Then, when the stairs finally drop, use a camera manipulation to make all of the Scythe dudes run down after us, instead of throwing their weapons. And then we sneak on by and start the second phase. The second phase is mostly unchanged and is up to personal preference, making sure to grab this fire grenade and money as well as the frag grenade for later sections, building up this inventory for other cool strategies. That is basically, for the most part, the evolution of the waterhall strategies in Resident Evil 4. Everything from New Game Plus to New Game Professional, PC07 to PS2. Watching speedrunners adapt and evolve as a community to overcome challenges like waterhall is super fun. I want this video to stand as a testament to how far the Resident Evil 4 community has come, how fast we have gotten, and how much we have grown. New strategies are found all the time, even in a game as old as RE4. If you would like to become a part of this community, there is several full-length tutorials for the New Game Professional speedrun, and I will link them below. Thanks for everything you've given me, both my supporters on Patreon and the speedrunning community as a whole. Stay lucky.